Okay, hello everybody. This is Martin John, and we are here for Tao of the Day. Tao of the Day is a show that I've been doing for quite some time on wisdom and the Noom Vibe for myself and for everybody else. The idea being that we're all going to be able to explore different ideas around the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching is an ancient text written about 600 BCE, presumably by a guy Lao Tzu, and there's all sorts of stories as to how it came about that it was written. But ultimately, what is most interesting to me is what was written. Now, it was written in a time in the beginning of our writing. It's one of the first texts. I mean, especially compared to now when everybody's writing everything all the time and putting it out there in the world. This was written 600 BC. This is around the same time they say that the Old Testament was being written. So this is a really important text in terms of the history of our evolution with consciousness as we started moving into a logic mind, as we started wanting to record things. So this is coming from another time. It's a time before we were so embedded into an economic or consumer world. This is before we were really in the world of structural logic. And so it's coming out of a time of relationship. What I mean by that is through evolution, we have to survive, and then we have to relate, and then we can be logical. So this was coming out of a time of the relationship when we had relationships to the earth and the sky, and that's where all our myths come from, and we have relationships with each other, and everything is more fluid. There's no structure. There's no marriage per se. There's no jobs. I mean, there are things that you do, but way back when you just worked as a community and everybody did what was needed to be done. So this is coming out of that time frame, and it's coming from, and everything really was built off of that, but this is reaching back to that time of relationship. And so we start to see that substance was being established. We started, like, within every relationship, there is substance. Right? However, we need to be able, in order to experience that substance, once it grows too big, we have to contain it. And we have to contain it within structure. So you have substance and you have structure. And life, in and of itself, is substance. And when that substance starts to grow, it needs a structure, and that structure is going to be survival. Then we move into relationship, and now we are coming to the end, I believe, of our logic mind and moving into a new phase, which is a spiritual phase, maybe a non-manifest phase. I don't know how to describe it because it's not here yet. We've been flirting with it. It's been maturing. I look at Jesus and all of the Buddha and other individuals like that who have ushered in this next phase. But we're the ones that are going to see it mature. So this is Tao of the Day. We are reaching back to a time in the Tao Te Ching. We're reaching into a time that helps us live a little bit more reasonably, helps us live within this experience in a more reasonable way, in a way that is, because all relationships require, back and forth, fluidity, openness to receive what is offered, and openness to be connected. And that is a way of living life that is more kind of fluid and more connected. And that's so much what we want today. We want to be connected. We want to be connected to each other. We want to be connected to the earth. We want to be connected to life. And logic has built a lot of structures that help us, that don't help us connect, right? Logic within our jobs, within productivity, within all of these things that we have to point to say, this is what a good life is, right? Finance or secure job or marriage or whatnot. All of these things have structures around them that help us measure our happiness or our success or what have you. But those things aren't things that we should be going around trying to measure. We should just be present with them and see what they are, because success could go away tomorrow, right? Happiness can go away in a minute. So it's important to be able to, look back at this text, at the Tao Te Ching. I think, and the Tao Te Ching has helped me with my recovery. The Tao Te Ching has helped me with, relationships. The Tao Te Ching has helped me refocus and understand where I want to put my energy, where I want my energy to go, and how I want to, because when I think about it logically, when I love somebody, I don't want to control them. I don't want to make their decisions for them. But when I'm in a relationship, I have often noticed that I have power within that relationship. And because I have power within that relationship, I manipulate and I'll do things. And it's really difficult to be on a path of knowing and of, I don't know. I said knowing because I looked at this number 46, knowing when to stop. I'm going to go ahead and read this just because it's popping itself out at me. If you have a number between 1 and 81 you'd like to select, please come up. We'll chat a little bit, and then we'll have you pick a number, and we'll read through that. Number 46 is knowing when to stop. When Tao is followed, shelter, food, and water are prioritized. Going counter to Tao, excess and hoarding are praised. He who believes there isn't enough is cursed to never have enough. He who believes he must acquire will acquire nothing that lasts. There is no greater waste of time or energy than being discontent. Therefore, the master knows what is enough and is content to stop there. The line that really popped out at me in this one was, there is no greater waste of time or energy than being discontent. There is no greater waste of time or energy than being discontent. This is what harked back in my mind to what I was talking about a moment ago within relationships. You want to manipulate a relationship, or you want to manipulate a person, or you want a promotion, or you want to be able to measure your success and all of these things. So much of that stuff has to do with being discontent, being unhappy with what currently is happening. I'm just taking a moment to process whatever is happening in this moment. I mean, last couple of days, I have been exhausted. And I could make up a story as to why. And I can tell you guys, 3 weeks ago, I went to Spain for a week, and then I've been working on, I bought a house a year and a half ago or so, and every joist is broken, and I've been repairing it slowly, and I jacked up this exterior wall, and I put in new joists, and I moved the plumbing, and I changed some electrics, and I put in a countertop. So I can tell you all that and say, I'm exhausted because for the last 3 weeks, all of this stuff, right? I've been doing all of this and my body is sore, However, that might not be why I'm exhausted. I may be exhausted because of the phase of the moon. I may be exhausted because of what's going on. Maybe there's poor air quality and it's making me tired, or maybe I'm dehydrated, or maybe, who knows, really. But I could make up the story and give you all of this stuff. But that is me making up the story. It seems like this is probably the case. However, my exhaustion might be pointing somewhere else. So I'm exhausted. Now, how does this relate back to being discontent? I could sit here and say, oh, I'm exhausted. It's because of all of this. I am the victim I am the victim of these actions that I've had to take, and now I am exhausted, and this is the punishment, or this is my discontent. I am discontent because I am exhausted, and I can't manage getting up and doing this stuff. I am exhausted, it's true, but that doesn't matter, and I don't have to be discontent because of it. I can just be exhausted. Now, I have created a life in which it's easy for me to go ahead and be exhausted and not have to be at the beck and call, or go to an office, or I don't have to get up and wrangle myself out to like do yard work or other stuff. I mean, I got a yard that I have to do yard work in, but I don't have to force myself to do any of that stuff, and I can be exhausted. Now, there are things I have to do like this, and I'm going to do these things, and I want to do them, and I do want to challenge my exhaustion, and then when I can no longer challenge it, I can take a nap. But there is no greater waste of time or energy than being discontent. So I'm not going to be discontent about how tired I am. I'm not going to sit here and tell people, oh, I slept this, and my story is so important to me because it gives me permission to be exhausted. And you have permission to be exhausted. You don't need a reason. You have permission to be what you are at this moment. You don't need a reason. You may think you have a reason. And I was actually thinking earlier about this. There's no greater waste of time or energy than being discontent. Oftentimes, I have seen in the world people be discontent and come up with the reasons as to why they're discontent, and some of which, are diagnoses, some of which are other people. It so often turns to us being a victim to something. And that line, there is no greater waste of time or energy than being discontent. If you are not the victim of something, there is no reason to be discontent. You are going to just be. When you recognize that this is just what you're experiencing, and it's not bad that you're experiencing this, just like it's not bad that I'm exhausted. It's not bad that you didn't sleep last night. It's just what happened. Now, here you are. Are you going to be the victim of that, or are you going to just accept that this is what is at this moment, and there are ways to adjust that? There are ways to combat that for tomorrow. There are ways that you can address those things. So this number 46 is entitled Knowing When to Stop. When Tao is followed, shelter, food, and water are prioritized. Going counter to Tao, war, excess, and hoarding are praised. Okay, so here are these 6 things, right? Food, shelter, water, war, excess, hoarding. That's pretty simple, right? When we prioritize food, shelter, and water. So if you have to go out and get a job so that you can provide these things for yourself, this is following down. If you are a homesteader and you live your life so you don't have to trade money for food, shelter, and water, well, that all the time that you dedicate toward that, this is why hunter-gatherers, had so much time on their hands. A lot of people don't recognize that. They literally would They only worked a couple hours a day, if that. They only worked at gathering food a couple hours a day. We work 8 hours a day so that we can have food, water, and shelter, if not more. And we have our weekends off. The hunter-gatherers didn't have their weekends off, but what do we do on the weekends? We go pick apples, right? We go pick berries. We go do these things that are about like collecting food anyway. We go shopping. We have to invest our time into doing that because now we have money. We have to go to the certain places and do all of this. But when Tao is followed, food, shelter, and water are prioritized. Once you have that, once you have food, shelter, and water, now in our world, we create fear of lack because if you don't have enough, you have fear. And in order for, so that it's a confusing message that helps you be confused about when to stop, because we don't want you to stop in a consumer society. We don't want you to stop in a society where we're kind of pushing you to be more productive in a way that we see fit and that we see productive. We are constantly trying to confuse you on when to stop. So going counter to Tao, war, excess, and hoarding are praised. I don't think that we have to look too far to see where those things are the case in our world today. Right? So those are just ways of identifying whether or not we're following Tao or going counter to Tao. Right? When Tao is followed, shelter, food, and water are prioritized. Going counter to Tao, war, excess, and hoarding are praised. We look out at the world today, what do we see? We see billionaires hoarding their money, and we see excess everywhere, and we see war all across the planet. The United States is on the brink maybe of civil war. We have Ukraine. We have all sorts of stuff. So that's going counter to Tao. And it's all very confusing. And number 46, titled "Knowing When to Stop," we recognize that, like, can we stop now? Can we really just start to enjoy each other and to have a space where we can be present? He who believes there isn't enough is cursed to never have enough. Oh, that's a big line. That didn't pop out at me before, but here it is. He who believes there isn't enough is cursed to never have enough. Because it's perception. You perceive there isn't enough. And so all of a sudden, you are never going to have enough. Because that's how you're perceiving the world. You look at the world from this perspective of it's not enough. He who believes he must acquire will acquire nothing that lasts. You see this in so many people when they go and they purchase something that's going to solve all their problems. And then all of a sudden they purchase this thing, they have it in their home, and it's like, oh, that's not enough anymore. It's the hungry ghosts of everything, right? Like, he who believes he must acquire will acquire nothing that lasts. I got to go get. I got to go get all of this stuff, and I got to put it in my, I got to put it in my vaults. And then as soon as you put it in there, it just disappears into the void of your space. And now there's more stuff that you have to acquire, more things you have to acquire, because it's the acquiring that actually we're addicted to. It's not the thing. It's just acquire a thing, acquire another thing, acquire something else. He who believes there isn't enough is cursed to never have enough. He who believes he must acquire will acquire nothing that lasts. There is no greater waste of time or energy than being discontent. Now, how does that line connect to everything else? Being discontent with focusing solely on shelter, food, and water. Like, if you focus on shelter, food, and water, what are you going to do for the rest of your day? Like I said, the hunter-gatherers who focused on shelter, food, and water had plenty of time on their hands. They would sit around and they would stare off into space. They would make up some stories, and they would probably start playing music or dancing or having fun or playing games or doing other things like that. Building community. building their relationships. That's how that would evolve. But going counter to Tao, war, excess, and hoarding are praised. Well, if you're doing all these things, do you want to connect? If you have war, do you want to connect maybe with your team, but not with the others? When you have excess, do you want to connect? No, because people might take that from you. When you're hoarding things, do you want people coming around snooping at all your stuff? No. That's separateness, right? There's connection and separateness. If you're concerned about, I just got back from Spain. I have family in Galicia in Spain. And the way that they just open their house to me, and the way that they open their hearts and just are, my family in Spain reminds me of how I see family. And we sit and we eat and we talk at the table together. And back here in the States, I don't even have a table in my house. And when I'm at my mom's, if it's not being productive, my mom's just like, okay, well, you can go. so like, it's all about productivity. It's all about, like, for my mom, it's like, I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to, and there is no understanding that, well, you'll do what you need to do and I'll do what I need to do. Let's just be together in this moment, and have some food, have some beverage, under a shelter. Like, there's nothing more beautiful than that. There's nothing more, like, you can get promotions and graduations and all that kind of stuff, and all those are like these great flashes in the pan. But if you can connect with people around a table and talk and laugh and play games, and if you have time for that, then you have everything. Right? Everything in life is there for you. And you stop there, knowing when to stop, right? You just say, everything is enough. And in the morning when I get up tomorrow, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work in the garden so I can prioritize food again. And I can make sure that the waterways are clear, and then I can do all that. But, you put in 2-3 hours a day and everything gets worked out. Maybe you have to work five hours on building a little shelter or something, like when you get that opportunity. And maybe you got to work on it for a couple days, like for me in my house, right? Like, I've been spending all this time working on it. And yes, I'm exhausted. Knowing when to stop is important. I still have a couple of things I got to do, and I'll do them. And I have a list, and we'll go ahead and get through them. But in time, I don't have to do it today. I can. So I don't have to make a plan to do it or to not do it. It has to get done. I'm not going to say, I'm going to go get the the O-rings and the gaskets and stuff I need for my faucet. I'll go ahead and fix it in time. Maybe that'll happen today. Maybe it won't. But that's okay. There's no greater waste of time or energy than being discontent. So I can sit here and say, the faucet's leaking. I got to make sure I get the conduit in, and I got to do this, and I got to do that. Or I can just say, it'll get done. I know it'll get done because I'm the one that's going to do it. The master knows the master knows what is enough and is content to stop there. So I can stop there. I can just be here right now, present with who I am, as I am, without having to force anything further. I don't have to be complete. I don't have to have all of the tasks completed. Yes, it's nice to check things off the box, but maybe I'm a little too tired today. But I'm not going to be discontent about the fact that I'm tired and I can't do a thing, because what's most important? Food, shelter, and water. And those things are moving forward. Those things are advancing. Those things are getting better. I don't know why I'm exhausted. Maybe it's because I've been doing so much, but maybe it's something else. Maybe it's supernatural. I don't have to make up a story. I can just be happy with where I'm at and not embrace discontent and say, I wish it was different. How often do we get around saying, I wish it was different and I am the victim of this thing? A lot of people might not look at you're, possibly not sleeping enough or you're being tired as being a victim, but that's what it is. You're a victim of your having not slept. You're a victim of your being tired. You're a victim of you not having enough energy. And that's discontent. Right? We're embracing discontent, and we're giving ourselves story to tell ourselves why we're discontent and to let ourselves off the hook. And I'm not trying to say that you're to blame for your exhaustion. You're not. But you believe you are. And so you need to let yourself off the hook. And we create these stories to tell us, and this is why it's so easy to accept a diagnosis, right? I can accept a diagnosis because now I'm a victim of the diagnosis. I don't have to, I can take a medication, or I can do this thing, or I can just tell people that this is what it is, and then I don't have to, I don't have to be nice to myself. I can be a victim of something else entirely. But you can be nice to yourself. You can give yourself grace. You can step in and say, you know what? I'm exhausted today, and that's okay. And if I got to be at work because that's what they require, I'm going to go to work. But I'm going to go to work and I'm going to be exhausted, and I might not get a lot done, and that's okay too. That doesn't mean you have a plan to not get anything done. Doesn't mean you go in with malintent. You're just tired, and that's just the way it is. So let's just go in and be tired. We'll get a cup of coffee and see if we can't shake it. We won't stay tired. We won't define ourselves as tired every minute of the day, because that's being a victim, right? Like if we wake up at 6 a.m. and we say, oh, I'm exhausted today. And then at 7 a.m., we remind ourselves of how exhausted we were at 6. Well, how do we know what we're feeling at 7? If we say, oh, I woke up and I was so exhausted. Well, so what? How are you feeling now? Have you reassessed, or are you still exhausted? It's not about when you woke up, what happened. It's about what's happening now. And say, oh, my body is just, and then maybe as your day goes on, you realize that, okay, you're only exhausted in a certain way. And this is where mindfulness and being able to be present with your body and say, oh, what's actually happening right now, rather than what have I been holding on to? I remember there was a time when I was younger and still trying to figure things out. I don't know if I had been introduced to the Tao, so I was probably a teenager. And I started using and drinking when I was 13, so I was probably some sort of intoxicated. And I was driving. I know. It was the early 90s, so it was a different time, and I was a different person. I was not a very responsible person back then. And I happened to be listening to a religious station for whatever reason. I always used to just engage in different things. And I had a big problem with my dad when I was a kid, as did he with his dad and all these other sorts of things. But I remember, and this was a turning point in my life, I think, because the preacher guy that was on the radio show had said something to the effect of, are you angry with your dad? Well, how many times do you wake up in the morning and have to remind yourself that you're angry with your dad? And I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I do. I go, oh yeah, my dad did this. My dad beat me. My dad didn't love me, all these kind of, things. And I would remind myself of all of those things. And it was real interesting that I finally had, it was because of that question that I heard on the radio randomly, that I started thinking about this idea of like, well, how much do I have to support my own, how many things in my life do I have to support my discontent, right? Like, I'm like, oh, I don't like my dad. Let me go ahead and remind myself every day I don't like my dad. It's kind of like when you wake up and you're like, I'm exhausted. And then at 2:00 in the afternoon, you're like, oh, I woke up and I was exhausted today. And you're just telling the story and reminding yourself that you're exhausted. I've turned to the phrase, it's all stupid. It's all stupid. Instead of continuing to, be connected to my own discontent. Rather than allowing myself to be discontent with something, I'm just like, it's all stupid. I don't want to tell a story. I don't want to tell a story about what I woke up feeling. You know, I can still feel a sense of exhaustion, but that doesn't matter. It's all stupid. It's all fine. This is when do you want to stop? When do you want to stop complaining? When do you want to stop hoarding? When do you want to stop? Going counter to Tao, war, excess, and hoarding are praised. So let's think about that. This is from this 46 that I read, Knowing When to Stop. Going counter to Tao, war, excess, and hoarding are praised. What do you think, complaining about my exhaustion is? It's like war and excess, right? I'm embracing this. I'm attacking this ability for me to get up, and I'm just complaining. That's a weapon, right? That I'm using against myself, reminding myself of how tired I am. Really, just kind of beating myself down, saying, "Oh, I'm tired," and then judging it. I'm exhausted. Here's the story. Oh, I don't have a defense for that anymore, and now I get more tired. It's like, know when to stop. Get some food, have a little coffee, rest. And if you got to go to work, but don't carry that with you. Go do what you got to do. And if you can't get to work, don't, maybe. Spring Blossom is going to join me. I love a good spring blossom.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that. So have you heard this show before?
I've listened to you a few times.
Okay, so you know how this works.
Yeah, and the Tao is one of the things that I felt very attracted to because I try always to live in the present.
Yeah.
And if I'm in the present, I'm so grateful to be alive.
Yeah, as this 46 says, there's no greater waste of time or energy than being discontent.
That's right. So what you've just been talking about, a younger part of myself really gets that reflection, that was such a waste of time. And it made me so unhappy when I wasn't contented with what
Yeah.
was happening in the present.
Right. But that's what's happening. So why be discontent with it?
And even if it's even if it's difficult in the present, it's such a challenge. It's okay. It doesn't matter.
I mean, how many things do we do? Look at sport. Sport is difficult, but we do it and we cheer it on. And it's difficult things aren't to be avoided.
No.
That's just a label we're putting on something that challenges us. And being challenged helps us be resilient and helps us explore our bodies and explore our minds and explore our relationships
Oh,
deeper.
yeah. It's true.
It's so beautiful.
It is.
So, what's going on with you these days?
What's going on? Well, I'm living in Australia on a property of someone that's very kind, generous, and I do exchange work for accommodation, although I live in my van on their property.
Yeah.
So it's a very liberating experience to not have anything over the top of me, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not carrying anything with you. You have this relationship, and this relationship allows you. This is food, shelter, water.
Yeah.
You make sure that you have your van is your shelter, and being able to put it somewhere so you're not harassed by others. That's because when that's living over you, if you're living in a van, and I was homeless for a while, And so I do understand like what it's like to, at any moment you could be approached and told to leave.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
and when that's hanging over you, it's really hard to just surrender to this moment, because you're living, ultimately with these fears, that you are, you are going to be doing something that someone else doesn't want you to do, and you, because of your status and your state at this point, you can't do anything but surrender to that.
And that's why relationships are so important in
Right.
order for us to feel safe.
Right. And
And the
relationships,
exchanges.
right.
Go
And
on.
relationships don't have to be, structured, but we have to make sure that we have relationships. We have relationships with people. We talk to people. We open up. We are loving, and we invite other people to love us.
Yeah,
It's so vital, and it's such a part of
absolutely.
life. Well,
And
let's
and
go
it's
ahead.
the nourishment. It's the nourishment we need. In this world so much. People need to feel that they're safe and that they're acceptable in the world. I spent a lot of my years feeling like a social outcast.
Right.
And now I'm kind of happy about that, because I really don't feel that where most people are in the world is where I want to be. So, you know,
Right. Well, and that's the thing. Like, so many people, and you and I have both experienced this, I'm sure, living under the influence of others. We've
exactly.
had to try and fit in. And then at some point we decide, I can't I can't give up so much of myself to fit in with you.
Yeah,
Who are you to tell me I'm not good enough? I am me, and I am the best me. And as we take this journey, I mean, I have 23 years clean and sober, and it was me. It was what drove me to drinking and drove me to trying to fit in, was why I needed to escape my life, because I needed to fit in with others, and others had nothing to what I really had. And it took me a long time to figure that out. And here I am
beautiful.
living my own life, receiving from the universe every day. And what a
Yep.
beautiful experience this is.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want you to pick a number between 1 and 81.
5.
Number 5. Where is my mouse? There we go. Number 5. Ooh, this is a good one for what we're talking about. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read this, and usually when I read this, it's going to be a jumble the first time you hear it, so just find a couple words or a line that really stands out to you. We'll start there, and then we'll go through it line by line. That sound good?
Yep.
Beautiful. This is entitled Impartial. Nature doesn't care. It knows everything is more than it seems. The master doesn't care. She knows that as well. It is good to be empty. Thus the master embraces the void. Like a bellows, she produces from emptiness. Stay centered.
Wow. That's gorgeous.
Did anything stand out to you?
I think the bit about accepting the void,
Yeah.
because I'm 77 now. Well, I will be in June. And, people can't really see me as a 77-year-old, because I'm just like a child in many of my relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that that happiness and joy of being alive, and I wake up out of my sleep and I feel I put my feet on the ground and I'm happy
Yeah.
that I've got another day to live.
Yeah.
So as I think as we get older, sometimes we contemplate our own departure, and in doing so, that extends your life, because it makes life more valuable. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Right.
knowing that we are here for a short time in this body, in this vehicle, but realizing that we're also something more than just our body. We're we have a vibration, a tune inside of us, a singing, a longing. Um, um, it's the sound of the universe traveling through our bodies, if you like. It's the experience of being in a physicality, and so much of what we have is not physical. So
We have we have a lot more non-physical than we do physical. That's for sure.
exactly.
But we keep looking at the physical and we keep measuring the physical. And that's something that I think has really, this number 5 is entitled Impartial.
Right.
Okay. And when I look at this, and especially from what you're talking about, and let me just say, you're beautiful. And it's so wonderful to connect with you. I can just feel your energy, and it's wonderful to connect with you.
I felt, thank you, Martin, and I feel the same way about you. And that's why
Oh,
I've listened to quite a few of the different ones, but I've wanted to come back to Tao. And it's the first time you've come up since I first started listening, which
well.
was a couple of weeks ago when I found you. And I thought, I'd like to listen to this guy.
Oh, thank you.
Mm.
This number 5 starts with this really interesting sort of, and so this is my translation of the Tao, and so
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
it starts in a very interesting way, I think, and it says nature doesn't care; it knows everything is more than it seems. The master doesn't care; she knows that as well. For me, not caring kind of has these two different kind of connotations. One, when you say, I don't care, but really you do.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the honest, I don't care. Like, I don't care what you choose to do. I'm going to love you anyway. I don't care who you choose to be. You are perfect. I don't care how you want to treat me. I am going to treat you wonderfully anyway.
Yes.
I don't care. And that's how nature is. Nature
Yes.
doesn't care who it is that the sun is shining on.
Oh, you're going to make me cry. You're right.
Right? It doesn't
Yeah.
care if you're a murderer, if you're Netanyahu, if you're
Yeah.
us, if you're connected. It doesn't care. Nature doesn't care. It's not going to sit here and judge you. It's
No.
not going to sit here and tell you you're wrong. It is going to love you regardless.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that this is called impartial because in the physical world, you measure and you make choices, one or the other. Nature doesn't care, and neither does the master. There is no choice to be made. We will receive what is here to receive, and we will give all that we have to give, regardless of who you are and what you choose to do with it. Now, of course, in the physical, I have to keep myself safe, and so I could love you, but not have to put myself in danger to your, actions or what have you. I could do all of those things, and I can live in the moment. I don't care how much money I have. I don't care how much, how much I'm hoarding or how much I'm saving. It doesn't matter because I know I'm safe. Why? Because I'm connected to everything. And this is where it moves into, it is good to be empty. And the line that stuck out to you, thus the master embraces the void. And the void, within the void, is all things. And the potential for everything.
And we are so much more than what we think we are.
That's right. And when we enter the void, that means we don't have story. We don't have a story to fill in the blank of what's going to happen later today. Or how someone is going to respond to what I've just done. Or who I exposed myself to be. There's no story there. There's no history. And we are all living with these perceptions that we picked up throughout our lives. Throughout our entire lives, we were living under the influence of our parents, and then the economic system, and the education system, and then we were living under the influence of whether or not we had to be a parent, or we had to earn money, or we had to do all of these things. We are under the influences of all of those things, and we can't be empty.
And can you think there's sometimes, for me, I feel like someone's watching, and then I realize that I'm expecting to be judged. And then I realize that it's my inner world that's doing that. It's not something external. However, I also feel that good vibrational relationships of people who have died that loved me, they're there in support of me. This makes me happy when I think that thought, rather than the other thought, which is someone's watching and judging me.
Yeah. The Christian judgment has penetrated. If you define yourself as an atheist even, and I ask you questions about what it means to be good and bad, you go right into the Christian sort of hierarchy of what that means. You know, it is penetrated, and that judgment that comes with that, and we parent that way, right?
Yeah.
We do all of these things to, and I mean, you as a child and I as a child. I mean, I'm almost 50, but my parents were very young, and they beat us when I was a kid. I would never beat a child, and it didn't help me, but it was part of my experience, and I've grown from that, because I took responsibility for it. I was never a victim of that, even though as a child, of course I was, but it was still, but that's how Tao brings us into that, right? Tao says, okay, don't, yes, that happened to you. And then what it says here is like a bellows produced from emptiness. Well, if I'm carrying and reminding myself, as I was talking about earlier, about how, my dad hit me all the time. Well, can I produce from emptiness? No, I can only produce from that foundation that I built of I was beat as a kid and I was a victim. And that's what I produce from. So this is why I can't be impartial if I'm carrying that with me. And then I will care. And sometimes it's within an ethical sort of right or a moral right that you do care, right? When you say, oh, children are being hurt. But that argument is always about finding the quintessential victim, so that you do care, so that we can manipulate your mind and get you to not come from a place of not caring. Nature doesn't care. It's going to shine on that person who beats that child just as much as it's going to shine on the child.
Even with compassion.
Right.
That's the big one.
Because
not
we look at the
child,
child
but
as
for
the
person
victim.
Who's being, but it's not. It's the person doing it that's the victim.
Right. They're the ones that have been embracing victimhood for a long time, and they're the ones that because if you turn to beat a child, there is you are not healthy.
No. Absolutely.
And it may just be a moment, but it may be the foundation from which you've built your life. And that's why it's important to be able to experience the idea of impartiality. Most people don't like the idea of being impartial. They prefer to choose a side.
Mm.
You know, that's why.
And that's the duality.
That's right. That's
The
duality.
trap of duality that we've
It's
all
right.
been inflicted with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And Tao is, I mean, is known for its non-dual.
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Because then you find the diversity. You see the wonder of life in a different way when you're not making judgments of this or that.
Right.
Oh,
And then at the end, the last two words are stay centered.
right.
You know, and when you lean towards one or the other, right? Even us, like when we talk about our age, we talk about our experiences or whatever, we tend to move away from center a little bit because we are identifying with something.
Right.
We're identifying with being 77. And it's like, yes, we can be happy because people don't experience us in that way, but we are partial to that then. Right? We're partial to being younger. Why? Because our world does not celebrate aging. So we can't. Go on.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just thinking from my perspective in the dedication of looking after the vehicle that I travel in.
Yeah.
That's why they say the things they do. It's not that I feel any pride in that,
Oh, good.
although I have in the past, and now I'm just coming to it really. That that I wish for others to see that it's possible that we can live alive for the rest of our lives and then die. Or
Right, yeah.
we don't have to go into the idea of, oh, look, there's a nursing home for you. Or,
Right.
you're going to lose your brain, you're going to lose your mind. All these things that people put on each other as a normal thing. It's not normal. And what's normal is for us to look after the vehicle and to keep it active and keep thinking and expanding and not letting ourselves limit ourselves to what is seen as normal for everybody. I mean, it's the other thing is not to there's a struggle in me at the moment, which I'm coming to terms with too, to do with don't have the expectation of other people.
Right. Absolutely. That's a
You
huge
know,
one in Tao.
it's enormous. You don't have the expectation of them, and I try not to be manipulated by the world because of other people's having expectations of me. So why would I want to put them on other people? So
Absolutely.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
so hard. And that's part of this. It's good to be empty. Because when you're empty, you don't have expectation of someone else.
that's right.
Because you're empty. And so much of, I remember, I don't know if this is going to relate, but it's popping in my mind. I remember during the COVID times, I didn't have COVID for a long time. And then at some point, I would feel a little like fever or whatever. And I was ashamed.
Mm-hmm.
I had shame and I was embarrassed by the fact that I had gotten COVID. And it was a really interesting experience for me to sort of explore this idea of like, oh, it's kind of, it just it laid on me really. And it turned out to not be COVID. I eventually did get COVID, but like this moment didn't turn out to be COVID. I just kind of had a cold or something.
Uh-huh.
And it's all of these expectations, like these expectations that I put on myself to be healthy or to be, strong.
Yeah.
And here I am getting sick.
Yeah.
To be careful, to be, all of the things. And then I was like, oh, now I'm embarrassed by this thing. And it's like, wait, like have the feeling you're having, but also like face it immediately, which means tell somebody. Don't hide it.
Yeah.
Don't, you know, because like it's just such a, it's interesting. I don't know, like these ideas of expectations, the expectations I put on myself, the expectations I think others have of me, the expectations I think that other people have created for themselves and I have to keep up. All of that stuff. It's good to be empty.
And telling somebody just dissolves it.
Right. That's a Brene Brown thing, I think, right? Like she says, just, you know, once you have shame, you know, just address it. Put it out in the open.
Yeah.
Because it's not you. It's not you personally. It is
It's a conditioning.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
And to be impartial, as we're talking about here today, is
Yeah.
really, is like, oh, it doesn't have to be one or the other, right or wrong, or good or bad, or strong or weak. Nature doesn't care.
No.
Everything is more than it seems, which means this story or this incident is going to unfold differently than it seems to be unfolding. Nature knows that. The master knows that as well.
She does.
Yes.
I got 10% battery.
Okay, well, I'll let you go. My timer's weird, and you only got 30 seconds left anyway. I really appreciate you coming up to me and
Love you,
chatting,
Martin.
Spring Blossom.
Love your
I
work,
love you
Martin
too.
John. Yes,
Oh,
you got.
sweetheart.
Lovely. Beautiful, darling.
I love you, dear. Bye-bye.
Bye, love. Bye, darling.
Okay, that was Spring Blossom. What a nice conversation that was. Number 5, Impartial. I'm going to go ahead and read it again. Nature doesn't care. It knows everything is more than it seems. The master doesn't care. She knows that as well. It is good to be empty. Thus, the master embraces the void. Like a balloon, like a bellows, she produces from emptiness. Stay centered. Yeah, it's interesting, like the bellows, but the bellows reference, you know, she produces from emptiness. You produce all this energy from emptiness. You produce the heat of a blast furnace from emptiness. But it is that first line, nature doesn't care, it knows everything is more than it seems. That little line, it knows everything is more than it seems, really launches us into the whole of this verse. Everything is more than it seems. What does it seem? What seems to be happening at this moment? What seems to be happening is that, oh, I'm being judged, or what seems to be happening is, oh, I'm the victim of this or that, or what seems to be happening is, all of these things seem to be happening. But nature knows everything is more than it seems. So the idea being that if, you know, this is very similar to the story I've told a number of times about, like, you know, the farmer and the horse runs away and the wife is like, oh my God, this is the worst day. And then we'll see. The farmer says, we'll see. Then the horse comes back with a mate and it's like, oh, we have 2 horses now. Ah, this is great. Oh, we'll see. Like, and then the son tries to break the other horse and breaks his leg. Oh, this is the worst. We're not going to have help along the farm. The farmer says, we'll see. Everything is more than it seems. We'll see. Let's watch as this unfolds. It's so beautiful to not care. And it's really the only way that we can care the most, can care the deepest, can care the most efficiently and effectively. It's by loving someone without asking if they're worthy of it, without asking if they're worth it, but just loving them anyway, shining on them anyway, regardless. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Martin John. This is Tao of the Day. I'm here every day, 6 to 7 Central Time, in the morning. And I appreciate you guys stopping by and listening. If you're interested in the text that we read here, this is my translation, my new English version, and you can find that on my website, martinjohn.com, which you can get a link to in my profile. Yeah, definitely feel free to write me any messages here on Noom Vibe, and I will respond to them. Spring Blossom, I will be sending you the text to number 5 in a chat shortly. And love you guys. Until next time, keep recovering yourself.